Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today I'm going to be answering some questions about Asmodeus, which is a question that a lot of people asked about during my call for questions for Adventures in Forgotten Realms week. Anytime I see draw 7 cards, I know I'm going to be in for a real fun time, and I like that a lot of people also had the same idea and wanted to come up with some ways that you could get more cards or better value out of Asmodeus. So let's take a look at what we've got. The first suggestion that we're going to look at came from Ariel Zao 150, who wanted to combine Asmodeus with Teferi's Ageless Insight. If you have both these out and you activate the Draw 7 Cards ability, what happens? So, as you can see here, an instruction to draw multiple cards is actually treated as though it were one instruction to draw a card that many times. What this means is that both of Asmodeus' Exile and Teferi's Ageless Insight's Draw 2 are going to see this event happening 7 times and want to interact with it 7 times. The person who's drawing the cards is going to be the one that decides what order they apply in. If you apply the Teferi's Ageless Insight first, then you're still going to be drawing 2 cards, and Asmodeus is still going to apply to that, so you're going to exile 2 cards instead of just 1. On the other hand, if you apply Asmodeus first, then you go from drawing a card to exiling a card, and Teferi's Ageless Insight doesn't care about that. So that means that for each of the 7 draws that you're going to take, you're going to have the choice of exiling 1 card or exiling 2. And that's going to be how it works for basically any card that you're going to draw. Now, that's going to be kind of cool, but you're still going to have a bunch of cards exiled, and if you want to get them back in your hand, you're still going to have to pay the black and be able to return them that way. These cards do all count as being exiled with Asmodeus, even the extra ones that you get from Teferi's Ageless Insight, because Asmodeus' ability is the one that actually did exile all of these cards. So that is a way to get a little bit of extra value out of it, but I'm not going to say it's the best one yet. Another idea that I heard in order to get some extra value out of things was maybe instead of using the black to draw 7 and then exile a 7, we could kind of take a shortcut. Let's say we have Necrotic Ooze in play, and our graveyard contains both of Asmodeus and some other card that can exile a lot of stuff. Arc-Slogger is a great choice. So if that's the case, what if we used Arc-Slogger's ability to deal 2 damage to something, and in the process exile 10 cards out of our library, and then we wanted to use the single black ability out of Asmodeus? Would we be able to return all 10 of those cards to our hand? And so this one looks pretty promising at first, especially if you knew about this rule here, which says that if an object has an ability that refers to it by name, and something else gains that ability, then the something else's name is used in place of any of the times that the first object's name would have appeared. So that means that as far as the game is concerned, Necrotic Ooze's ability says that you're going to pay black and return all cards that were exiled with Necrotic Ooze to your hand. And that's pretty good, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Certainly, the Necrotic Ooze's ability did exile all 10 of the cards when you use the red deal 2 damage ability with Necrotic Ooze, but it turns out that there's a little bit of a problem. And the problem is something called linked abilities. If you have 2 linked abilities, that's basically 2 different abilities that rely on each other to work. If you look at Asmodeus' black return ability, then you can see that it's relying on something else to exile those cards. In this case, Asmodeus is if you would draw a card, then exile it instead ability. Now, the way linked abilities work is that the black return all the exiled cards ability is only going to refer to cards that were exiled using the ability that was linked with it. Of course, replacement effects are not copied by Necrotic Ooze, which means that this Necrotic Ooze is not going to be considered to have exiled any cards that can be returned using the black return all cards that you exiled ability. Of course, the other thing is that if you aren't copying that replacement effect, then you can just activate the black draw 7 card ability, and then Necrotic Ooze is going to let you draw 7 cards just fine. There's not going to be any exiling them, because the ability that exiles them, of course, is non-Necrotic Ooze. So that would be one way you could get a lot of extra value. So finally, we've got the third option, and this one I think is the one that makes the most sense flavorfully. As Liliana Vest taught us, if you have a binding contract with a demon, you can get out of it by killing the demon. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. Replacement effects only work if they're in play to see the event that they're going to replace happen. If, for some reason, we sacrifice or otherwise get rid of the Asmodeus before we draw any cards, well, there's not going to be a replacement effect telling us that we should exile them instead, so we just get to draw them normally. That means that we could activate the black draw 7 cards ability from an Asmodeus that we have on the battlefield, And then if we find some way to get it off the battlefield by the time that ability resolves, then we get to draw 7 normally, and there's no exiling or losing life or any of that other nonsense. So, of course, there's any number of instant speed cards that could do such a thing, and the idea that I liked the best came from the Master of 13, who suggested that we could use Phyrexian Tower to sacrifice the Asmodeus and use that black mana we generated in order to help us activate Asmodeus' ability. This definitely does work, but we have to be a little bit smart about how we're doing it, and we have to know about how activating abilities works. Anytime you're activating an ability, there's a time in that where you get to activate mana abilities to help you pay for the costs. And if we use that Phyrexian Tower's mana ability at that point, then we're going to be able to sacrifice any creature we want, including Asmodeus, and make some black mana. From there, activating the ability proceeds entirely as normal, and the game doesn't really care that the thing that let us activate the ability in the first place is no longer on the battlefield. It's a good thing that things work this way, because otherwise stuff like Mog Fanatic would be very difficult to activate. So the way that this would work is we would say that we're activating Asmodeus' ability, then in the process of activating that ability, we're going to say that we're going to use Phyrexian Tower's mana ability and sacrifice the Asmodeus for 2 black mana, use that and any other black mana in order to finish activating the ability, and from there, when that ability resolves, there's not going to be any Asmodeus in play telling us that the card should go anywhere else other than into our greedy little hands. So, that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Which one of these is your favorite? Or maybe you have another great idea for how to get some extra value out of Asmodeus. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Join me again tomorrow for another Daily Ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.